Hi, good afternoon and welcome to our Lunch and Learn. Today we have the pleasure of welcoming a friend, a New Yorker, a professor of architecture and preservation at Columbia University, and an environmental activist. Today we have Ann Buttenwieser, and she's going to talk about her new literary project. I pass the mic to my friend and my colleague, Ann Buttenwieser.
Hi, I'm going to start by telling you a little bit about myself. And then because we're at the Department of Records, I want to talk about the importance of keeping New York City's archives, which were an important part of my building a pool and also writing this book. My private and my professional life has been related to the water. I was a child, I grew up on a river in Maryland, and I learned to swim at a very, very young age. In high school, I was a competitive swimmer. I was on the team, and in college, I was also on the swimming team. And then as I grew up and went out into the world, I worked as a waterfront planner for all of the agencies in New York City that had a waterfront portfolio and still have waterfront portfolios. In the late 1970s, I entered a tiny doorless room in the basement of this building. And this is a picture of the Battery Maritime building in the 1918s, 1920s. So you see sort of ferry here, actually probably even later than that, because this is pretty much this is a ferry going to Governor's Island. This is a ferry going to New Jersey. And at the basement, there were offices here. And then in the basement was a doorless room. And the sooty gray-green of the once multicolored Beaux-Arts former municipal ferry pier, which presides over the upper bay, it's at the bottom of Manhattan, presaged the condition of the interior space that I was allotted to work in. My study spot was alongside the lower level of the ferry terminals, which it was under there and under there. And that was, at one point, it was the loading area for wagons and motor vehicles that went to Brooklyn. And a few feet away was a former waiting room. It was a huge, which is now a waiting room, which is completely redone. A vast, damp, I'm reading you from the book, dark space through which echoes the long horn blasts of ferries on their way to the US Coast Guard base on Governor's Island and to some other destinations in New Jersey. I heard slapping waves, tinkly piano notes, the radio voice of Don Imus. Can you imagine this is where I was working? And the bump bump of someone dribbling a basketball somewhere in the cavernous building. I sat down at a broken down desk, layered in over a century's worth of dust. I sneezed. I'd gotten access to this place from my academic advisor at Columbia, Professor Kenneth Jackson. Ken had recently explored what was described to him as the useless stacks of archives, which the Department of Ports and Terminals, and they were on the top floor, that was Department of Ports and Terminals, were about to throw out. Ken told me there might be some useful material there for my dissertation at Columbia. And it was to be a study of the planning of Manhattan waterfront at that time. What I found in the shadow, I'm again reading again, in the shadows of the dimly lit waiting room, amidst mounds of assorted debris, cat excrement, and the evidence of the daily visits of curious waterfront rats, conditions not unlike those in the New York City's late 19th century tenements, stood an acre of long closed wooden and metallic file cabinets containing the archives of the New York City Docks Department. They dated back to 1880. I was seeking documents that confirmed my theory that recreational facilities did play a role in the primarily industrial New York City waterfront in the past. Printed and elegantly handwritten documents were pressed in folders, labeled with the numbers of every street terminating on the Hudson and on the East Rivers. Carefully, I positioned my flashlight, and with white gloved hands that were covered with dust and dirt, I pulled a brittle piece of paper from one of the doors. I read the following command: open the floating baths. Okay, this is a picture of the baths. This was taken by Reese and Jacob Reese. He was an activist in the 19th century, and his role was not only to talk about getting better open space for the people living in the tenements, but also to take pictures to prove what he was talking about. And he took pictures of all of the baths. They were actually, these baths were existed in northern cities beginning in the mid-19th century. They were the progressive and sanitary reformers realized that the people living in the tenements, and there were an enormous amount of people coming in from abroad at that time, that they had no running water, they had no toilets, they had no bath facilities, that they needed to get clean. And so they decided that they were going to, one of the reasons they needed to be clean was it was going to improve their health, and it was also going to improve the way they behaved. The immigrant and working class people, they lived downtown, and then the upper class people lived further uptown, and the upper class people were always afraid that the tenement dwellers were going to come uptown and get into their bailiwick. So to open these baths gave the tenement dwellers something to do downtown near where they lived. So initially the baths were a place for the tenement dwellers to get clean. The city had no money to build these baths, so the sanitarians and the progressives went up to Albany, and for 21 years fought in Albany to get legislation to give the city money to build the pools and also to maintain them. There were 15 floating pools around the city, and there's a map of that in the book. This is a 2-bath facility. It was at the Battery, and it was privately owned. So you had a bath there on the left side was for men, and on the right side was for women. It was much more elegant than the floating baths that were Boss Tweed first opened. It was interesting, Boss Tweed opened these. Can you imagine that he got a lot of patronage for doing that? The baths had enormous hole. They were like giant houseboats, were these enormous holes in the center, and they were filled with polluted river water. So can you imagine? They were swimming there to get clean, but they were swimming in polluted water. The wood structures, they were rectangular, as you can see here. They floated on pontoons, and they were attached to the land by a gangway. There were slats on the sides and the bottom, and that kept people from being carried out into the river. So that was safe there, because there were a lot of currents there. It was safe for them to swim, to bathe, quote, there. The baths were on both in Manhattan, and there was some in Brooklyn, and there was some in the Bronx, and they were there for 67 years. And in the 1930s, Robert Moses got money from the federal government, and that was the WPA funds, to build 11 in-ground pools, and there was no longer a need for the floating baths. Furthermore, the legislation had required that any new building going up had to have running water, which they had, and also places to bathe. This is the work going on for a 21st century pool. And this was the pool. I bought a barge, or I created a foundation called the Neptune Foundation. And we dug a hole, as you can see, on the left side, and that was for the pool. And we raised it up on the right side, and those are the dressing rooms that you can see there. Next picture, please. And here's the floating pool lady today at Barretto Point Park in the Bronx. This is the most, has got the high, an area of the city that's got the highest obesity rate, and it's got the highest rate of asthma. And, but in order to get to the floating pool lady at Barretto Point, I had to jump through hoops for 27 years. And some of these hoops were, there was a labyrinth of jurisdiction. Is this a pool? And it's, which means it's land-based, but there were no laws for no way to handle a pool on a barge. Is this a building? So in which case it would belong to the city buildings department. Is it something that floats in the sea, in which case it would belong to the Coast Guard? If it's a pool, it needs to be approved by the health department. And it also needed to be approved by the Department of Environmental Conservation in the state. And they were not happy with something that was going to cast a shadow on the waterfront, so that the fish, if the fish swam under it, they wouldn't, you know, they wouldn't be interested in swimming under that. So actually the city did a test to see whether in fact the fish were bothered by this shadow. And in fact, they loved it, because there were boats coming up and down the East River. This was at Barretto Point Park. And they jumped under, or they swam under sprinted under the pool to protect themselves. It didn't win over that state organization. There were political currents that I had to face. As we are getting a new mayor, going to be getting a new mayor soon, there were several new mayors, several new governors over the 27 years, obviously, that I was building this. So I had to reintroduce the project each time there was a new governor, mayor, whatever. In Brooklyn, it was in New Jersey, I was working with the mayor actually to put the first pool there, and we were all set to go. And then there was an election and he was outvoted. So that died, and I came back to New York with it. There was also an ability to get insurance. There's one kind of insurance that covers people who might slip on the edge of the pool and hurt themselves. There's another kind of, and they were also worried that people were going to jump overboard. Well, you can see the fences there. It was a little hard to jump overboard there, but they were worried about that. So I had a lot of trouble finding an insurance company that would actually cover the pool. And then there was climate change. Never would I have believed climate change was going to affect what I was doing. 2 hurricanes. And work had to stop on rebuilding the pool for 6 months. So there we are. And before we go to the questions, I just wanted to talk a bit about the archives and why we need these. The useless archives. However, they need to be preserved. And I tried to find out whether or not these archives, these floating pool archives, exist anywhere in the city. And we've not been able to get an answer from that department. So I'm assuming they don't exist anymore. I have like 3 notebooks full of absolutely every street and where the pools are, and got the information that is now in the book. My time in the Battery Maritime led me to discover the physical reality of the 19th century New York City. And this led me to my passion to augment the physical reality of the 21st century New York City with a modern floating pool. The archives also led to the book we're discussing today, and they must be preserved in the future. Yes and no. Because of the restrictions about having something that's going to kill fish, i.e. shadows, that they're going to supposedly kill fish, we have actually designed a pool, what we call pool 2, which has got a clear bottom. And so that we probably wouldn't have as much problem getting approval from the state for that. But at the end of the Bloomberg administration, we tried to get money from the city to build and open such a pool in Brooklyn Bridge Park, which is where the pool first was. And there's a constituency there that is dying to have a pool come back there. But then the mayor, as we say, the mayor left, and that project died. Yes, we need more. In-ground pools are expensive to build, more expensive, and also there's no land. You need a lot of land for that. And what are you going to do? Take land where there's already how much needed housing and put a pool there? No. So yes, I certainly want to see more pools being built, this kind of pool being built in the city. We served 50,000 people 2 years ago, the last year that it was open. It was closed during COVID last year. 50,000 people in this small pool. Yes, the floating pool lady is opening on the last Saturday in June. And we're very excited about that. And I will go up there for the opening. Clap hands for everybody, kiss everybody, hug everybody. They also, they give swim lessons. You realize that an enormous amount of children in New York City cannot swim. So the floating pool lady, the parks department, which now owns the floating pool lady, gives swim lessons every single morning. And they have a swim team, which is competitive. No, the floating pools of the past were, up until the 1920s, they were to clean people. That when the city discovered that the original pools were so filthy, they required them to be closed. There's a problem with the original floating pools. We didn't have a connection to aqueducts, so there was no water coming into the city. So by the time later on, water came into the city, they were able to enclose the pool. I closed, I think about, I can't remember, 5 to 10, something like that. And were able to keep them open until the 1935. The dimensions are, it's this, as long as, I can never remember those dimensions, but it's as long, wait a minute, half Olympic size in length, and it's got 7 lanes.
And I have a question.
Yes.
What happens to the pool when the pool is not in use?
The pool, we decided not to try to have a too seasonal use of it. For this pool, we wanted bare bones. We just wanted to get something open as a prototype. So it's closed. It's just, it just sits at Barretto Point Park. But in the past, the first 10 years that the Parks Department had this, the Department of Environmental Conservation of the state required them to leave New York State at the end of every season. So can you imagine the expense of taking it away, and it had to go to New Jersey or wherever it went, taking it away and bringing it back every year? They could have built several new pools with that money. But anyway, the newest iteration is they stay right there.
Susan asked, please share with us what kept you motivated in spite of the many agencies and ups and downs during the 27 years.
Pure passion. I just wanted to get this done. There were times that I sat down and cried. There were times that I stood up and clapped my hands and was really, really happy. And I can tell you, when I saw the kids in the pool that first day, I cried.
Oh, okay.
Out of pleasure.
Yes, Leslie, how did you get involved with this project, and was there an organization behind your effort? How were you able to sustain your involvement for such a long time?
Well, I guess when I finished my last job with the city, actually it was with the Downtown Alliance, my husband said to me, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "I'm going to build a floating pool." And, you know, all right, I committed to that. I had to finish it. Not, you know, not only that, but I had raised the money privately. What could I do? You know, all of these people who had put money into it, and all of a sudden say to them, "So sorry, we're not doing it." No, no, can't do that.
Okay, Susan, how do you sign up to swim in the floating pool?
You just go.
Okay.
Go out to Beretta Point Park. There's actually a subway that goes near there, and then there's a bus from the subway to the pool, and you just go. You don't have to sign up. It's free, and you just go. If it's very, very crowded, you may have to wait in line for the next session. But yes, and I invite everybody to go and just see it. It's so great.
Thank you. Kate, what was the most challenging bureaucratic or political hurdle you faced in the process?
That was the state DEC. At one point, they fined Neptune Foundation $20,000, which for being at Brooklyn Bridge Park at the piers there, we brought it from the south, where it was rebuilt in Louisiana. We brought it up to Brooklyn, and I was given free space at the Brooklyn piers, which were then being turned over to the city by the Port Authority. And we had to finish the pool, you know, put up the flooring, put up the coverings, because we were afraid that those would get blown off coming up from the south. And they said, "You were not supposed to be there. You did not have a permit to be there. We're fining you." And this was really because the state doesn't want to add more floating things into the river. They feel it's like enlarging the land by putting floating things on the river.
Okay. Madeline, nowadays we tend to think of pools as a place for leisure, but the floating pool of the past really seemed to be more about cleanliness. Why is that?
Well, that was because of the need of the progressives feeling the need to provide a place for the people in the tenements to get clean. However, pretty soon the people in the working class community down there, they needed a place to get cool. You know, the summers weren't quite as hot as they are now, but they would go there just for a dip in the pool. They had 20 minutes and they could cool off. Obviously, there was no air conditioning for them. And later, in the 1920s, the pools became a recreational place, and they had swim meets, and you know, it became what it is today.
Okay, Janet, two questions. Are there concerns about ongoing funding?
No, the Parks Department is running it, and so far they've done a fabulous job, and they're happy to do it. You know, unfortunately, the city gives the Parks Department's funds to run their pools, and so this is in their inventory of pools that they run.
Okay. Second question: do you think this could be replicated in other cities? How would you recommend it?
I have gotten calls from cities all over the world. They pick my brain, they ask questions, I offer to help them, they hang up, and I don't hear from them again. So yes, anybody could do this.
Okay, how do you keep the pool from becoming polluted?
The pool is not open. It's enclosed. It's a hole. We bought a barge and we dug a hole in it. We just lifted the cover of it and opened it up, and that became the pool. And so obviously it's not polluted. We are connected, and one of the problems with the city is that there are no connections to the land. It needs water, it needs electricity, and it needs a waste place for the wastewater to go out. And where it is in the Bronx now, when we opened in Brooklyn for the first summer, the Port Authority piers had all of those facilities. So we just, put in hoses and connected it up. Where we are in the Bronx, the Department of Sanitation, one of the departments was increasing its waste treatment plant, and they needed to do something, give a gift to the city. So they put in all of the lines for us.
Yes.
For free.
For free, great. Susan asked.
They got to pay for it, but we didn't.
Okay. Susan asked, what are the dimensions of the floating pool?
I think I told that before. The pool is a half Olympic size long, and it is 7 lanes wide, but the whole barge itself is much longer.
Yes. How the community where the pool is located welcome the pool?
Every time I go there, everybody's clapping.
Oh, cool.
I go up and I shake the hands of, in those days, I was able to shake the hands of a kid or a parent. And at one point there was word that the pool was going to have to close because they only had a permit to be there for 10 years. And people would come up to me, you've got to do something. You've got to be able to get this pool to stay here. And I had decided that if at the end of 10 years, they didn't renew the city's permit, I was going to get everybody who goes to the pool to march on Albany. We didn't have to do that.
Okay. And what other recreational areas are in this community, or this is the only one?
Well, there's Barretto Point Park, this is attached to. It's a very small park that Adrian Benepe was in charge of getting built. And it's absolutely adorable. And there's a place to sit. There's sprays, wonderful views of the East River and all of the islands that are off the East River. You can see Rikers Island. And it's the nearest pool is nowhere near where these people live.
I have one more question. What, if any, are the environmental impacts of this kind of pool?
I mean, having proven that the fish don't get killed by the shadow, I don't think there are any environmental impacts.
Okay. And one more question. What is your next project?
My garden.
Okay. Okay, any more questions, please? One second. Are you following the progress of Plus Pool?
Oh, yes. As a matter of fact, if all of you would like to tune in tonight at 6:30, we're having a pool then and now discussion with the founder of Plus Pool. So he and I are going to be talking and someone is going to be interviewing us. Yes.
Okay, somebody, Victoria, what is your inspiration?
The Battery Maritime building files.
Okay, and okay, and I think you have another event for your book. How is your book going?
Well, with your help, it's going very well, thank you. Yes, there's another event tonight. I've got several more events coming up.
Perfect. Congratulations, and it's been a pleasure working with you.
Well, thank you so much for doing this. I really, really appreciate it, and I had a good time. So hope everyone else did.
Perfect. Okay. Congratulations, and I mean there is a lot of beautiful messages on the chat. I'm wondering if anyone would like to ask the final question. Oh, Catherine, where do you like to swim in the city?
I have not swum in the city. I remember when I worked at the parks department, there's a pool, public pool that Henry Stern used to adore to swim in, and he used to take us all down there before we got to work and meet me at the pool. And I can't remember it. It's on 78th Street and the and the east side along the river there. It's a lovely, very small pool. So that's the only one that I've been in.
Okay, perfect. So before we close the event, if there are no more questions, and do you have any final comments?
No, I thank all of you for coming today, and I hope all of you will buy the book if you haven't already, because it's an interesting tale, tale of struggle and success.
Yes, okay. Thank you so much for joining us. We have another event on Thursday night. We have another artist, another New Yorker, a wonderful artist called Margaret Cotswell, and she's gonna be with us. And I'm sharing the link on the chat. It is a free event and it's going to be a lot of fun. So see you Thursday at 6:30 p.m. Thank you for attending Lunch and Learn.